Right, well, welcome everybody and welcome back to the Connected Citizen series after a bit of a hiatus over the Christmas period. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Boon and Wurrung people of the Coleman Nation. I pay my respects to their elders, both past and present. Most of you will know who I am and who Symphony3 are, but for those who don't, Fergal Coleman is my name. I'm a director here at Symphony3. Symphony3 was established in 2011 and based on our depth and variety of experience, we define ourselves as technology experts with a deep understanding of local government. So this webinar series, the Connected Citizen webinar series, is all about elevating the digital transformation conversation in local government. I'm joined as usual by my worthy accomplice, John Nevins. How are you, John? Good to have you back.
I'm well, Fergal. Hi, everyone. Pleased to be here. I'm
sure everybody knows John, but for those of you that don't, John has 25 years experience, John, in local government, and 15 as CEO of the city of Kingston. So there's not much John doesn't know about the sector, but puts me to shame all the time. I'll introduce our guests shortly, but let's wait for a few more people to join us. And while I'm doing that, I'll just get through a little bit of housekeeping. So a bit of housekeeping, some introductions, and we'll get straight into a discussion. We're going to try and take it easy on the slides today and just open it up. We've got two really knowledgeable panelists, so we want to let them loose and answer any questions you guys have as an audience. So ask the questions as you go. Important to say this session will be recorded. So let us know if you've got any issues with that, and we'll make it available obviously afterwards as well. This is the fourth of our Connected Citizen schedule. And as you know, it's a digital first organizations empower internal stakeholders. So we're talking about internal stakeholders, employees, and all the things that go with that today. We have a technology session coming up on the 28th, and two more sessions then in the coming months to finish out the series by the end of financial year. Another couple of events that may be of interest to attendees. On the 3rd of March at Hobson's Bay, we've got a digital platform user group, all about APIs and integration technologies in local government. It's primarily for our clients, but if you're on this call and you've got a deep interest in it and would like to join, Eamon will throw the link into the chat there and people can sign up if they want to come. And then on the 24th of March, we're going to run a session on how to manage projects better with digital dashboards. That's going to be a webinar. So watch out for details on that. Back to today. So really important to say that these webinars, we're talking about employee engagement and empowerment today, but it's in the context of digital transformation in local government. And I'm not going to dwell on this slide. Apart from on the right-hand side is where we want to get to. And this is what we think council's technology needs to look like. Very quickly, there's glue in the middle that connects up all the systems, which essentially automates a lot of the manual tasks in your business. We need to get to that because that will free up staff to go out and be closer to the customers, as we can see up the top there. Once we've connected our systems, we've got customer portals, and we need to make our systems available to customers to access services 24/7. And then once we've got our systems and our customers connected, we've got data, and we need to connect our management to that data to make better decisions via dashboards. And of course, putting that technology in place is one thing, but it changes the skill set that we need in council as a result, which of course drives today's conversation. The framework of the series, you'll see down the left-hand side there, we've got, I think it's 6 different strands around digital maturity. And simply put, each webinar has addressed one of these. So we're down talking about internal stakeholders today. And in our mind, by the time we've gone through all 6, actually 7 webinars, we'll have put together the digital transformation jigsaw piece for you. So on to today's session. welcome Sonia and welcome Steve. And
Thank
I'll
you.
start ladies first. Sonia, do you want to give us your 30 seconds about yourself and your expertise?
Yes, thanks, Fergal. Well, my name's Sonia. I've been working in the talent and human resources space, both in HR and talent acquisition roles for over 25 years. I've worked across most industries and really looking forward to joining the conversation today and adding my perspective.
And Stephen, some of our viewers will know you already, but give us the 30 seconds as well. You're very welcome as well.
Yeah, no, thanks, Fergal. Great to be back again. Stephen Dowling. I run a small company called ETM, which is all about helping organizations improve performance. I sort of try, one of my big things is connecting the dots and helping people to make sense out of the world. And, you know, I've been I started life as an accountant, then I moved into project delivery, then I've been spending many years in the agile and lean world. And now I'm a very passionate person helping organizations to unlearn and relearn new ways of doing things. So really delighted to be here. Looking forward to the conversation as well.
Great. And we've had a couple of conversations between the four of us, and we did have some slides, but John and I kind of got off one of the calls. You'll affirm this for me, John, but we went, God, we've got to stop talking and let these two loose. So we've dispensed with most of the slides, and we're going to try and have a broad conversation. I'll pick up any questions that the audience have. So please ask away. You've got these guys at your disposal for the next half an hour or 40 minutes or so. So ask the questions. Importantly, we kind of said, well, what's the big idea? Can we talk about a big idea to start, and then we'll break down into three different sections. You know, what's the current situation look like? What are the best companies doing, and then what can council do? So without further ado, we'll throw out the big idea. And I don't know, I'll read it out, I suppose, but local councils, to our mind, have the opportunity to leapfrog the corporate sector, to become a talent maker versus a talent taker, and the innovation hub where young talent goes to get experience, learn and practice new skills, and use the latest technology and thinking to deliver great outcomes. And you can see the reasons why in the statement below. So to start things off, I guess we're being a bit provocative. We want to put a poll out there and we want to ask the audience what they think. So you should see a poll hopefully on your screen there. So please take the time, don't be shy, give us your opinion. There's no right or wrong here. It's just going to help us to, I guess, frame some questions. I've got a very positive take on things so far. So there's a second part to this question. For those of you that have already answered the first part and answered the poll, what I want you to do is throw in your reasons into the chat. So why did you say yes? Why did you say no? Why did you say you're not sure? And if you can frame those as questions, that's great, because we've got Sonia and Stephen here, and we'll throw the questions out at them. John, I don't know, very quickly, you know, one of the points you made to start out with that kind of, I guess, encouraged us on this question was that councils, you know, they have values, and the people who work in councils kind of have a vision for what they want to achieve in their career. Do you want to touch on that very quickly, and then I might hand over to Stephen?
Certainly, Fergal. It's my experience of local government that the people who are attracted to local government and who stay in local government are people who are motivated, value and committed to trying to make a difference. They value being able to contribute to the community. And it can be as whether they're an engineer or a planner, someone working in childcare, the broad range of employment skills and services that are reflective of local government. I can make a difference, and that to me and that to those individuals is really important. And if I think about the youngest part of our workforce now, Generation Y, the match between, it's a values-driven, hardworking, intelligent workforce grouping. they're a great match for local government. Local government can be a very attractive employer for values-driven employees. It's building on, I think, one of the strengths around local government as an employer.
Absolutely. And look, I think, well, the good thing here is we've got, I think, over 70% of people here are positive. Not everybody has answered, mind you. Some people are still shy, that agree with that this is an opportunity. So let's jump in and discuss it a little bit more. I'll pick up the questions while I hand over to Stephen. So if we look at the current situation, Stephen, today's landscape in terms of disruption and change, tell us about it. Tell us how we cope with it. Tell us what's coming at us. And tell us why your concept of unlearning is so important.
Yeah, no, thanks, Fergal. Yeah, like, you know, I'm looking and I'm engaging with lots of different organizations. And what I see is, you know, people are struggling, you know, they're struggling to cope. And why are they struggling to cope? I use sometimes like this water bottle, you know, everybody's busy and it's like the rat wheel's getting faster and faster. And when you think about, and I sort of have done a lot of thinking about, well, why is this the case? What's happening in the environment that's sort of driving this? And to me, there's a number of things that are sort of playing out. One is, you know, and everybody here on the call, you know, the digital technology piece and the speed of technology change that's happening. The world, and people might have heard the expression VUCA, you know, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. We've got a world now, and I always argue that we're living in an accelerating VUCA world where things are changing and they're increasing and it's becoming more and more complicated. And we're all trying to survive in this kind of increasingly fast changing world. But then what's happening, or what's making it extra difficult for us, is that we have this old way of thinking, an old way of working, which is basically a management model has been sort of come from the industrial age, which has certain sort of thinking around how we organize, how we plan, how we control, how we manage, how we lead, all that kind of stuff. And that worked really well in an industrial and a mechanistic era. But now the reality is that we're in a different age. And I say we're in the digital and the exponential age. So, and the reality of the world that we're all trying to live through now is different. So we have to sort of challenge a lot of our old world thinking if we want to be able to create organizations or systems that will be able to help us to survive and thrive in this kind of really fast changing world, because the old way just won't cut it. So we have to, and it's very confronting when, you know, you're sort of things that you've taken as this is the way I do things, and suddenly you come out and you get challenged. But when I look at what the best organizations in the world are doing now, they're radically changing the way that they're doing things, the way they're designing their organizations, the way they're you know, working with their teams, how they've, you know, the processes that they use to be able to fund and control things. So there's a lot of these kind of changes happening.
Great, Stephen. So just to take that idea a little bit deeper, Sonia, into your realm, which is, I suppose, talent and human resources. Tell us what you're observing, and do you agree with Stephen?
Yes, I definitely do. Stephen, in terms of what you're saying, in terms of the volatile and changing and uncertain world and that shift from the industrial age to more of the digital age, what we're seeing in terms of employees is the balance of power has started to very much shift away from what was traditionally the employer who said, this is what I'm going to pay you, this is what I'm going to get you to do, this is how I'm going to get you to work, to being much more employee driven, where it's really about how the employee wants to live and work and manage their lives. And as we talked about when we started the webinar, you know, councils have a really great opportunity to tap into a really large percentage of the workforce, which is what we call Gen Y, or more known as the millennials, who are people who are very civic minded and civic driven. But the big shift is that it's very much about the employee now, and is also, after we've seen the impacts of COVID, very much shifted to flexible and remote working. And that's brought with it a whole realm of implications for employers in terms of how they stay connected, how they engage with people, how they performance manage people has probably been the biggest shift. You know, we're absolutely moving away from those traditional industrial age ways of kind of sitting down once a year with someone to having now what's called regular check-ins, much more agile, much more open and moving conversations about where people are at and where they want to be. So it's become a lot tougher, I guess, to manage employees. And we've got so many different types of employees still in our workforce. The millennials or the Gen Y still account for the largest percentage. The new entrants, who we would call the Gen Zs, currently they're 6% of the workforce, but they're saying that very soon they're going to account for 1/3 of the workforce. And they're a whole different kettle of fish in terms of how to manage, and they're very, progressive, entrepreneurial. They have grown up with digital skills. So that comes with them. The learning that they really need is in those other areas like project management, in stakeholder management, communication. So what organisations need to train and teach people in is also changing.
So motivations and beliefs of this younger generation, is what we hear true? Is purpose really important to them?
Absolutely.
Are they different to my generation? Are they still
I'm
motivated by money? How do you acquire this talent?
Yeah, well, I think what we're hearing is that they're absolutely digital first. Everything's got to be digital, and that's just an expectation that they have, that organisations are going to be progressive, that they'll have the opportunity to work with the best technology. But interestingly, I think there was a recent Korn Ferry article that suggested that about 91% of this generation would take a pay cut to be able to work flexibly. So less kind of money driven than the Gen Xers, but still, entrepreneurial, but they want to be able to live life the way they want to be able to live it. They want to be connected. They want real-time feedback. They want real-time progress. And we really have to be able to match it from a technology perspective to be able to have the data that we need to make informed decisions about people's performance, opportunities to cross-train them.
And on the flip side of that, one of the discussions we had earlier in the week was just around actually attracting people, and you had some great stats around counter offers and things like that really quite frightening.
I guess in my career, I've kind of led, big and small talent acquisition functions in big corporates, and at the moment I'm doing quite a lot of work for an IT company, and I'm really noticing, there's a lot of movement in the industry. People are moving. It's big salaries. We're seeing inflated salaries, particularly in the IT space, because people will do anything to acquire the skills they need. Is it sustainable in the long term? That's another question. But what we're seeing is that as people are resigning, the counter offers are really coming into play, and organisations are having to become more creative about what they're doing to retain people. I'm going to give you this other opportunity. I'm going to move you laterally and treat you in this. I'll up your salary. I'll give you additional annual leave. I'll give you even more flexibility. I think we're pulling out all the stops to be able to keep the talent that we've all invested so heavily in.
So, John, having listened to Stephen and Sonia, I suppose from a general industry perspective, does this what changes have you observed, I suppose, in local government over 25 years, and has it accelerated in the last 2 or 3? And I know you're on the other side of the fence for the last couple of years, but you're still kind of very close to it.
Reflecting on my experience in local government and what I'm aware of in the private sector, I think there's been a quantum shift. Historically, the big issue was around attracting capital. We need capital to invest, because the traditional way of expanding your business or improving your service delivery was you invest in technology, you scale up by hiring more people. But competition today, and Sonia and Stephen have both touched on this, it's not around capital, it's around attracting the talent. That is the challenge here, that it's local government is competing to attract the right skill levels. And I think commenting that is also there's a change happening, and it's only gradual. It's in its early stages at present. It's what I'd call the democratisation of IT. Historically, if you wanted to introduce new technology, if you want to digitise anything, if you want to make changes that involved a computer, everything had to go through the IT department, and they'd have a list of projects. But the that we're in, Sonia said there, the current generation of employees, they come with digital skills. They don't need to go through the IT department. So you hire people with these skills, or you invest in your staff. And we're seeing it now. People like digitising forms to improve the customer service experience. You don't need to go through the IT department. And I saw it myself in mobile computing. It wasn't driven by the IT department. It was driven by the team leaders and the team members who were passionate about making it work. And that could be in the planning department. I saw it happen in communications, the customer service teams. My experience of AI was it was the customer service team who drove the improvements in AI, not the IT department. So I'd call that the democratisation of IT within an organisation, complemented by a shift to a workforce that expects digital technology to be there, and a very competitive marketplace for the recruitment of skills, because that's the way you expand and scale today. It's not by investing more capital, rather it's by recruiting the appropriately skilled employee. And I think local government can have a competitive advantage for a workforce that's attracted and motivated by its values.
We have a good comment here that kind of leads into that a little bit before, and I'll jump into section 2 in a second, but from Stephen Joyce. Hi, Stephen, good to have you on with us. The problem in the workplace is that even the millennials and Gen Zs need to be trained in the new technologies, as there are so many different technologies to choose from. This is on top of older workers who may still have fairly little exposure to tech solutions and now hold most of the positions of power and authority. Planning to cover the breadth of the problem whilst taking all staff through a change project has to be supported by workplace culture. And I think that's a nice little segue into section 2. I'd just be interested in Stephen's comment on that.
Yeah. This is so interesting, and I this is one of the things that I've got to. There's a couple of things that were coming out. That old world idea of, IT as a silo. IT now is an enabler, and it's a ticket to play for organizations. You have to have this kind of way of doing it. But then the really important thing is the speed at which technology is changing. You have to build an environment where, exactly like the comment from Joe there, is where you're continually evolving and learning and adapting as you go. Because I remember seeing a picture of all the current sort of digital landscape in terms of all the different technologies. And it's like this morass of loads of stuff. And then in 6 months' time, this is going to evolve. There'll be newer products, newer things that are happening. So the old world industrial model of training, let's just do a course, let's get a skill, and then we go to an organization, apply that skill. The world has changed. Like a really good example is Amazon Web Servers. If you do a course with Amazon Web Servers and you finish it, say, on Thursday, over the weekend, they're releasing new features. So by Monday, it's out of date. So this is the kind of world we're living in. So our thinking of how we educate and how we continually evolve our workforce, it's got to keep going. This is the world that we live in now. So you have to build. It's like a different world. It's a different mindset around education and evolving and skills and adapting. That's just the reality.
Sonia,
do you think, or do you disagree, Sonia?
No, I just want to add in, and you're absolutely right. And I think this poses, a real question for organisations and councils around, so how do we then train our people in our technology and our specific ways? Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, of doing things. And one of the trends we're seeing coming out of the States in the corporate sector. And I think that there's the opportunity for government to apply this is the concept of the corporate university. And, you know, at McDonald's, they have the hamburger university, and that is not about how to make a hamburger, funnily enough. It's, you know, an in-house university where people who work for the organisation go to learn how to be good middle managers, to be leaders, how to be entrepreneurial, how to run a business. You know, Apple have their own secretive university that was created by Steve Jobs, which was really about the Apple way. It's not widely reported on because we don't really know what they learn about. But lots of other examples. There's the Deloitte University. There's the Disney University. And what we're seeing is that the education system just can't keep up with the pace. You know, you go and do a degree for 3 years, and by the time you graduate, the technology that you learned about doesn't even exist. So organisations are starting to take this challenge in-house and saying, if we've got a plethora of all these different skills in our organisation, how can we cross-train, retrain, and train people who are like-minded, share our values, and have them be more adaptable across the organisation? So it's a whole new way of thinking about the learning and development, you know, within an organisation.
Just adding to that, it's in today's digital era, it's not as complex as it used to be. Now I'm stepping into technical space here, Fergal. Correct me if I get this
well,
wrong.
we can argue that
it's what they call low code or zero code. It's the drag and drop, click and connect. Once you've got the basics there, you can leverage it. You don't. The rest, you install the basic technology, but then you empower the rest of the organ. This is what I mean about the democratization of IT. The rest of the organisation doesn't have to have the same skill level as your IT department to actually leverage and use digital technology to improve the customer experience and to drive organisational productivity, because digital technology is less complex to enable once you've got the basics installed. And that's, they call it low code or zero code.
I agree with you. And what comes in, I'm reading a book at the moment called, it's around creativity. And it actually, reading it last night, Stephen, they talk about unlearning. And it occurred to me that, yes, we can give these tools to people and it's low code or no code, but what else do we have to do? And we have to create this culture, this environment where they can become creative and they can go and they can have a crack and we can go and we can try things. And I think that's a really important part of this whole new culture that we're developing. I know Stephen will talk about Atlassian, or you might want to give us the examples of Atlassian and what they do to encourage, you know, teams to do things.
Yeah, like I've been lucky enough, Fergal, to, as you know Atlassian for quite a few years. And when I started on my journey about 6 years ago, I was introduced to them and I was like, oh my God, what's happening here? And they have this incredible culture of innovation that's built in to the way that they operate. And you think of, like, it's maybe there's one good example I have, like, you know, we talk about, people would probably have heard the term psychological safety. You know, you've got to create a safe environment where people are not afraid to try things and do things. But a lot of times we talk about it, but if the leaders aren't modeling that behavior and supporting that behavior, then it doesn't happen. And there was a great example of somebody made a bit of a stuff up in Atlassian a while ago, and they ended up releasing some sensitive data out onto the web. And of course, the minute they knew that happened, they was like, oh, they posted something on their Confluence site, told everybody, hugely apologized, you know, they've done this to fix it, but, you know, they were just open and transparent. And then in the group, or in the company, people started sort of replying to the guy and said, oh, listen, don't worry, I did this once, and then I did something else. And everybody was sharing the kind of stuff ups that they'd done. And then Mike Gannon Brooks bumped in, you know, one of the founders, and he said, boys and girls, you think that's bad? I deleted the whole code base for Jira one time. And it was like leaders absolutely doing that and showing that. But, you know, and the trouble is, in the kind of old worlds that we live in, our systems are set up not to do that. So there's a big mindset shift that has to happen with the leaders to start to enable this. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, innovation is trying different things and finding new and better way to do things. And the only way to do that is absolutely to fail fast and try the next thing. But you touch on a really interesting aspect of culture, and culture is really at the heart of differentiating ourselves and competing for the best talent and being able to not only attract and retain the talent. The culture, the values of the organisation Atlassian is a fantastic example of that. You know, one of their values that I always remember is, you know, one of their corest values is build from the heart. You know, they've got some other really interesting ones about their customers and other bits and pieces, but, you know, a hugely strong values-driven organisation that taps into and enlists people behind their vision and mission, and that becomes their competitive advantage. And that's absolutely the opportunity that council has in terms of building a really great culture full of flexibility with innovation, collaboration, which is one of these new skills that we know we're going to need to see more and more of and develop more of. We've all got to get better at finding new ways to collaborate because we're not all in the same room all of the time. So how do we not think so in such a linear way in terms of traditionally when councils or organisations had problems, they would get people in a particular division to help, you know, the experts solve a problem. Now we're saying, let's just stand up a team of people from a whole lot of different perspectives. Let's get in a room. Let's get on a Teams call. Let's brainstorm and collaborate. And I think that breaking down all of those traditional ways of working, as Stephen talked about, that's the key to culture. That's the key to engagement. And that's the key to really getting people passionate behind not just what was traditionally their job, but the mission and vision of the organisation.
Sonia, I want to ask you, because you articulate this stuff so well, and I know you've been helping us with it. How are companies doing it? How are companies aligning employees and new hires with vision and culture and purpose? What are some of the things that you're observing or that you're advising people to do?
Sure. I think, look, I work with organisations all the time in helping them sort of develop their vision and their values. And really what we want to avoid is the situation where we've got a list of values and they're just there, they're on the website, they're not lived and they're not articulated, you know, in the way that the organisation does business. I always think about values and vision as being something that touches every part of the employee life cycle. And by that life cycle starts when we are attracting talent. So the strategies that the council may use to attract their talent, we'll talk about, you know, the things that council really values the most. That goes through to recruitment. So when they're in an active recruitment process, they're talking to leaders, they're talking to people that are living and breathing and talking about how the values play out. That's when they're recruited, when they join, when they're having their performance review or check-in. Nowadays, we don't do the one-year review anymore. Their leaders talking to them about their strengths and their values and how they're playing out and how they're contributing and encouraging those values to come out. When they're doing their training, the values are there. When people are exiting, the values are there. So it's about not just espousing the values, but translating them into every aspect of that employee life cycle. Every time there's a key strategy worked on, every time there's a key problem to solve, it's all about values and the vision and how they connect.
I'm going to just read a couple of comments here, and then we'll keep moving along. Just Zanti has a comment. They need different skills, so it may not be IT skills, but they need to know usability, accessibility, and other fundamentals, which is kind of talking to your point, John, around IT. Simple language being right up there, and I agree with that. You know, we have an awful tendency as technologists to use jargon. Duncan Kelly, hi Duncan. It is prepared to say you don't know something and ask someone, which is that psychological safety, I think, that we're talking about again. Stephen Joyce back in. When talking about great tech innovation and uptake, we usually either talk about very large companies with huge IT teams or tiny tech startups. However, working in government, this is good, Stephen, because I think we've got Stephen Dowling might have a good example here. However, working in government, or in fact most workplaces, there are only a tiny proportion of workers who are interested and adaptable to tech. The other 95% are saying, oh no, what do they want us to learn now? In government, most senior people are focused on politics, people, conversations. They're tech change averse. How do we bring in this large cohort into the dream of work smarter? Now, do you want me to bring up your slides, Stephen? Is this the appropriate time to talk about our friend in Belgium?
I think it could be a perfect time, because I think that's such a great point. Because like you say, you know, and I'm all for it, we've got to get the values right. We have to drive it. But the trouble is, if we don't have the right structures in place, people will come in, they'll be sold a story. Here are the values, here what we have. And then suddenly they get in and what's the reality on the ground? Are people living and breathing the thing?
To live and breathe it.
Yeah. And if they're not, they're going to be so demoralized and they're going to disappear.
They will.
Yeah. And one of the things, like I've struggled, because one of the things I love doing is trying to find great examples like the Atlassians of the world. And then, you know, what was a really good example of somebody who's done this in a really difficult, like environment, like a government environment. And, you know, we had conversations, didn't we, Fergal and Sonia, were saying, where can we see really great examples? And we were really struggling. And this is the best one I've come across so far. This guy's a really colorful character, Frank van Masselhoef. And he got the job in this Belgian Federal Office of Social Affairs. And it's funny, when you listen to the story, when he was getting the job, he basically told a story of how, you know, he was going to be this command and control kind of leader, because he knew he wanted to get the job, and that's what they wanted to hear. But then when he came into the organization, he had another agenda, and he said, no, I'm not going to do this the same way. I'm going to do this very differently. I want to empower my employees. And he basically went on this huge transformation journey starting in 2012. And one of the first things he did was he removed 3 layers of hierarchy that were existing within this area. So he flattened the structure. And then he went on this journey and like what we talked about, he said, well, okay, if I want to be able to attract, and this was one of the things when he took over, nobody wanted to work there. They couldn't attract young people. Nobody said it was awful, dull environment, didn't like it. So then he said, okay, how do I attract really good people? I've got to have the right kind of technology, up-to-date technology. I've got to give people flexibility. But what he had to do is he had to lay the foundation. So he said digital, we had to have this digital foundation in place to enable people to be able to sort of use the best technology. And then this guy actually allowed his people to start working from home in 2017, way before COVID. He basically set up this where people could work from home, and they figured out that about 93% of what they were doing could be delivered, knowledge type work could be done at home. And people had the choice of whether or not, you know, where they want to work, how they wanted to work. And so he flipped the whole paradigm on it. And when you look at it now, the results that they've had has been astounding in terms of the productivity increases, the customer satisfaction. Apparently in the whole of Belgium, he's now, his area, it gets the highest employee satisfaction scores across the whole of the sort of Belgian government that they have. It's absolutely inspiring. There's a TED talk that he's done that people can look at, and he sort of talks about the journey that they went on. But it's inspiring, and people, you know, want to work there. They can attract people now. And there's there's a statistic there where 93% of applicants want to work there. And things like he did, where he allowed people can use social media. They don't lock any of that stuff away. They trust their people, and they practice what they preach. And it's an absolutely inspiring sort of case study. And I would highly recommend people have a look at it, because this to me is a picture of where we need to head to. And I just think this guy but one of the things is he was a really brave and courageous leader that made these decisions. And to me, this is the one thing that I've seen in all the organizations. If you don't have a really senior person who's brave and courageous and willing to do this, because it takes real bravery to go away from the past, where everybody assumes this is the way we do it. This is the way we've always done it. to be able to move. But I just thought it was a brilliant example, Fergal. We had to share that with everybody, I thought.
Absolutely. No, I can see you're passionate about it, Steve. Wonderful.
Thanks, Stephen.
So let's get to the tour. I knew we could have gone on for 2 hours with this. An hour is really pushing it, I think. Got so much to say, but let's get to the practicalities now, right? So we've talked about what's happening elsewhere. We've got we've got councils from around Australia sitting on here going, right, well, what are the things we can do? Like, how can we actually get this change started to empower people? It's going to be harder for us to get people into our organizations with the skills we need. Once we get them, how do we keep them? How do we get them? And once we get them, how do we keep them? What are the practical tips, or what should people be thinking about in their organizations? I don't know who wants to take that first or who wants to lead out the conversation.
I'm happy to jump in with some comments before Sonia and Stephen give their views. It's, as we've said a couple of times in this presentation, I think local government has a competitive advantage in terms of attracting talent, particularly the X, Y and Z generation, because value-driven employees, local government attracts and retains people who want to make a difference, where values do count. And local government isn't, on top of that, it is a workplace where you get to do things and make things happen and to see the results of that in the community. So that's there. Local government then needs to leverage that in terms of the new employees today. They already come with a digital mindset and digital skills. An organisation complements that by being seen as an organisation that will invest in its employees' training and development, that will be an organisation that presents as a modern technical organisation when it comes to service delivery and the skill and the equipment and the resources that it provides to its employees. So I think it's that investment in technology complementing the skills that the new employees bring with them and leveraging the fact that local government already has a competitive advantage around being they are value-driven entities that attract and retain people motivated by values.
John, can I just expand that? I want to go back to a comment from Ignacio earlier on when I was asked for comments at the outset. He talked about building shared knowledge, encourage and facilitate increased and improved collaboration across councils. Now, I know this shared service has been a model, but has had limited success down through the years, I suppose, in certain respects. How can we unlearn shared services and start again? How can we do shared services better and shared knowledge better in this VUCA environment?
I can recall conversations going back many years around shared services, and in many quarters, I think quite reasonably, it was seen as, here we go, job cutting. And it was a cost-driven as much as anything else, and threatened people's employment and had bad press, and I think deservedly so in a lot of circumstances. Today, it's clearly not about reducing employees. Organisations need to improve productivity. They need to equip their people to be more productive, and local government can do that by local government has always been a collaborative work environment. Councils don't compete against each other. They've always been very willing to share policies that they're developed, share technology, share work together, share resources, do things collaboratively. Because local governments are not like private entities who are competing for their customers and market share. That mindset of collaboration and sharing when it comes to digital technology, when somebody's digitised a form in local government, if one council's done it, 78 other councils in Victoria or even Australia, elsewhere in Australia can do it. All they do is put their logo and their name on it. So, and you've spoken about dashboards. That same technology and the improvements that one council makes or drives can be shared across everyone else. And it's not a threat to any other council. It's not competitive. And as I said, local government already has that mindset. Councils do work to collaboratively and they do share.
So we talked about, I'll throw it over to Sonia now. We talked about, not being a talent taker. It's going to be hard to be a talent taker. any tips around councils collaborating together to become a talent maker? Because they can learn these skills in a reasonably safe environment, and they can actually, you know, local government is where the rubber hits the road. They can see the tangible outcomes of their work. So what can we do to become, create a, I guess, a talent making hub, for want of a better term?
Well, I think we, you know, as humans, we all seek variety in what we do, and we all love to solve problems. And, you know, when we're in a non-competitive, generally a non-competitive environment. So collaboration has taken on a whole new meaning now since COVID. Before it was very much around, you know, how do we work together to solve something? Now, actually, from an employee perspective, collaboration is not only about the work productivity and the solutions, but it's also about the humanisation of work. So if I'm working from home on my own 4 days a week and I get the opportunity to come into the office and collaborate in a workshop, collaborate in a team environment, then, you know, it's bringing in a whole nother element now. So I think having a very defined strategy around how you can collaborate, how council enables that both within the council and outside of the council, having opportunities for people to understand the flexibility and how they can live their lives in the way that they want to. All of that is incredibly important when we're trying to attract new talent. And it's being able to articulate it, it's being able to show that councils are definitely moving ahead in the area of letting people live their lives the way they want to, but also do really great work. And that collaboration, the way we used to collaborate, is different. And here's how we're going to enable it. It's thinking differently. The key to all of this is thinking differently. As I'm stealing Stephen's words, because he said this the other day, it is the key to it, because it's really not doing things the way we used to do.
Yeah. And you know, that's a perfect lead in, Sonia. Like, you know, if you ask the question, like I asked the question to people, what's easier to do, learn something new or let go of something old? This is the big challenge. We letting go of the old stuff is really hard because of the way we're wired. And we have to make sure, like Sonia said, we've got to get our thinking in the right place. If we still have this old world industrial thinking model of how we do stuff, then we're not even going to start on the journey. We've got to be willing to challenge that thinking and be open, be curious. Like I use the 3 words. I reckon if we want to achieve everything we're talking about here, then leaders have to be curious and be willing to challenge. And courage goes hand in hand with curiosity, because you've got to be brave, like that guy Frank was. Well, I'm going to change things. And then humility to be able to recognize, well, maybe it did work this way in the past, but now hang on a second, maybe I haven't got it right. And to me, if we've got those and cultivate those attributes, then we're laying the foundation for us to be able to move on this path. But exactly like Sonia says, if we can't get our thinking right, then we can't get the design and the systems and the processes in our organization right. And then obviously technology comes in to support the way we deliver value to our customers and our you know, people, and creating the right environment so we can attract people, retain people, get the best technology, keep people updated with their skills and stuff. But like that, it starts with getting the thinking right. And if we can't get that, then we're not really on the journey. And yeah, so I think that's a really important point.
I'm just mindful of time. We normally go for about 45 or up to 50. So I might, and I've got a couple of questions, but I might throw it out to Stephen and Sonia for any parting comments, and maybe one takeaway that people can go back to their desk and implement or sow a seed in their organization. What would it be?
Okay, I'll go. I just think have a look at that TED talk for this guy Frank, because I just think share that. Yeah, we'll share that. I'll send you the link, Fergal. And to me, the other thing I would say to people is just look in the mirror in terms of what we have, you know, unlearned over the COVID world. We have all changed in an incredible way. And so we have this incredible ability to change and adapt. And I'm really inspired. This, like, you know, we have this, there is, like we started with this webinar, there's a huge opportunity here if we're brave and we step into this world. So I just, yeah, that's my parting message. Just be curious, you know, watch that TED Talk. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's really just that in terms of attracting and retaining staff, it's not one size fits all anymore. We've got so many different kinds of people with different needs in the workforce. I think certainly coming out of the States, which we're seeing trends where they're calling their head of HR the chief heart officer, which is a reflection of the fact that of this shift to the employee experience. And the chief heart officer's job is to really start to understand how he can marry what the organisation wants to achieve with what the person wants to achieve. It's not easy, but it's values and culture that is the binding part that brings it all together.
Great. Now, Sonia, I've got one question here. We'll come back to questions, and if people want to stay on, they can. But people want to get in contact with you. Where do they find you?
Okay, my company is called Innovate, but I can make my details available to Fergal and the team. So www.innovate.com.au.
And they'll find you on LinkedIn as well, I'm sure.
They will, yes.
Now, Stephen, you're speaking at an LG Pro event, so people got a taster of what you're probably going to talk about on that. And where else can they find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn. Welcome to link up with people on LinkedIn. My company is called ETM, and you can find me at www.etm-unlearn.com. That's me. Yeah.
Wonderful. Right. So people, we're kind of done with the formal part of it. I've got one question that's come in. Which council in Australia are leaders in this? We've kind of agonized over this, John. I'm not going to say who I think is, but have you got any thoughts on that? Or do any of the listeners have any thoughts, I suppose?
I think local government's on a journey. And what you see when you look across the spectrum of councils, and I know I'm reasonably aware of what's happening in Victorian councils, you've got pockets. You've got councils who are doing really well, for instance, in mobile computing. You've got another council who's doing really well in AI. You have another council that's doing really well in digitising its forms to enhance the customer experience. It's there, but it's not pervasive in local government right now. Local government's on that journey, but I think local government is well placed to have it.
Which of course is, I suppose we started this at the outset, which is why there's such a wonderful opportunity for someone to grab that ground and really embrace it and really unlearn what's gone before and said, right, we're going to do this stuff differently now.
Yeah, it's joining the councils up. Like, who's interested, for instance, in digitising forms? Well, here's a council that's doing it really well. You can take all of those forms and you can use those. Where is the council doing AI really well? Oh, actually, there is one council that is really good in that space. And you could take everything they've got and just substitute the name of your council with all their questions and their program responses. So it's that sharing, collaborative space and local government's good already in that space. It just needs to be more aware of what's around.
Yeah. Have we any other questions before I finish out? You give 5 seconds for people to type something in. I think we may be done. Look, I want to, on behalf of Symphony3, thank John, obviously, for joining us every week. But Stephen and Sonia, this was a great conversation. We could have kept going. I'd love to have you back maybe next year if you're willing to do it.
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you.
See where we go. But thank you very much for your time and you're sharing your expertise so freely.
No
That's
problem.
great to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a great day, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.